Hello, and welcome to One Question Interview. Today we have Ella, who has a lot of music on Spotify and other streaming. You make music for tabletop RPGs, a lot of electronic stuff. There's a lot of influences going on, and I'm wondering, how do you balance all of these influences that come from a lot of different places in music? There's, big orchestral hits, lots of, electronic stuff, a little funk, a little, various electronic subgenres. How do you balance all of these influences that you have and apply them in your music?
So I think part of it very much comes back to the fact that I grew up, I like to talk about a lot that I grew up in Singapore, and I have a weird, third culture kid perspective of it in that sense, because Australian kid growing up in Singapore studying music in America sounds like a comedy show to me. But the thing about, growing up in an environment like that is you learn to just kind of embrace every possible influence that you can get because you have so many of them, and realistically that is going to transcend into my music, and that's going to come through in the way that I then apply a lot of my musical knowledge. So I think originally when I was starting out, I was very much focusing on that the classic cinematic style of Hans Zimmer or Lon Balfour or all these other big Hollywood composers, and just lots of taiko drums and brass and all that stuff. And that's fun, and it's pretty easy to write for me, but it just wasn't really doing it for me. So I started to especially coming to Berkeley, I started to think, okay, how can I take other stuff and bring it in? The most recent example where it was super obvious, my track Idea, which I think now has over 100,000 listeners.
Yeah, I checked.
That has these whack influences from breakbeat stuff, from jazz, from chiptune, from lo-fi hip-hop, all of these very weird genres, but then it's also got that additional layer of cinematic style stuff with big strings and flowing passages and things. And that was very much a consequence of me being kind of bored with just writing one genre, because previous to that at Berkeley, I'd just been writing jazz music because that's harmony and stuff. And I was I love this stuff, but I want to put it into context with what I actually write. So, the story behind that song I think is particularly funny. I was on the plane home from New York to Singapore, which is an 18-hour plane ride. And I was seriously bored, and I pulled out my laptop, popped on some noise-cancelling headphones, and wrote the track. Nice. And then when it got, the main reason for its success was it got put on a Spotify playlist called Jazztronica, which, I don't know what Jazztronica is. I had never heard that term before until it got put on that playlist. In the time since, I've kind of got an idea, but it still feels to me just it's jazz fusion, but funny.
Yeah, I don't really know either. Yeah.
And it comes down to that thing of when you're bored and you're playing with music and you just have all of these influences in your life, it's real easy to just throw them in there and see what happens. It works pretty well. As far as how that's affected the actual way that I write music, there's also an interesting element there, because a lot of the time people tend to focus either on entirely working within a digital audio workstation, entirely working within a piece of hardware, or certain scoring stuff Finale, Adorico, or Sibelius. I don't really work like that. I find I work best when I kind of incorporate bits and pieces from different places. So I don't know if it's in camera at the moment, but I have a modular synth setup that I'm slowly building. And a lot of the time my ideas start in that world of hardware and start in that world of less, I guess, functional stuff, and more just here's all the crazy sounds I can make and see what happens. And then I take that and I apply it within Cubase and start to flesh out ideas. And then I'll think, this could really use some strings or some flowing neat passages. I use the word flowing passages a lot. It's bad. That's 2 words. Don't. But when I'm doing that, I might hop into a scoring program or write it out on paper. So it really is because I'm working in so many different spheres of genre and culture and like influence, you kind of have to adapt the way that you write to that as well. Like writing classical music in a digital audio workstation is kind of hard. It's possible, but it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, writing electronic music and scoring software is honestly funny. And then you see these people like taking MuseScore and making like lo-fi hip hop with it, and I think that's incredible. But I could never do that. I need my knobs. I need my buttons.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things where influence affects process, affects outcome, affects influence. Because again, like the Jazztronica thing, I'd never really listened to that genre before, but upon like stumbling across that playlist because of Spotify, thanks Spotify, please pay artists more, they like it kind of exposed me to this whole new world of like other influences and things, which has been like really interesting. So one of my favorite artists at the moment, Volume, spelled Voljum, which is French, I think. Don't quote me on that. Like that, I would have never been exposed to their music if it wasn't for the fact that I'd like gone down this rabbit hole of what the fuck is Jazztronica. So it's fun, and it's this kind of cycle that just keeps repeating itself. And as I go into more projects, I'm becoming more and more ambitious with what I draw in. Like I've been experimenting a lot with using things like bossa and samba in my music because like here at Berkeley there's a lot of Latin American influences around you, and there's a lot of like really interesting stuff going on in that scene, and I think it's a really awesome inspiration to bring in, and then like see, okay, how does this relate to all of the other different musical cultures and ideas that are going on. It's just fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, end of the day, it's just fun. And I just like having fun, and I like bringing things from different places. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. You good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Once again, Ella Morana Music.
Mordela Morana, but just find me on Instagram. It's Ella Brown 1.